I think we will have a quorum, so we can move forward with kicking off the meeting. All right. Hi, everyone. It is currently 6:02 p.m. My name is Claire McKenna, Chair of the Ann Arbor Energy Commission, and as Chair, I'm calling this meeting to order. I'm currently participating from Sacramento, California, where I'm at the Behavior, Energy, and Climate Change Conference. So greetings from a world where it's 3 p.m. We will conduct this meeting like in-person meetings. Commissioners, during roll call, please indicate your current location. Also, during the meeting, please remain on camera, just as you would be visible during in-person meetings. And finally, mute your microphone when not speaking. Public comment will be via telephone only. To speak during any of the public comment opportunities, please call one of the following toll-free numbers: 877-853-5247 or 888-788-0099 and enter the meeting ID 956-8718-7876 on your phone. This information is also available on the published agenda, in the meeting notices, in the public notices section of the city website, on the broadcast of this meeting on CTN Channel 16, AT&T Channel 99, and online at a2gov.org/watchctn. Joe, will you please provide the land acknowledgement for us tonight?
Yes. Sorry, someone's having technical difficulties trying to get them in. Excuse me. I acknowledge that the land the city of Ann Arbor occupies is the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe, including Odawa, Ojibwe, and Bodewadmi and Wyandot peoples. I further acknowledge that our city stands, like almost all property in the United States, on lands obtained, generally in unconscionable ways, from indigenous peoples. The taking of this land was formalized by the Treaty of Detroit in 1807. Knowing where we live, work, study, and recreate does not change the past, but a thorough understanding of the ongoing consequences of this past can empower us in our work to create a future that supports human flourishing and justice for all individuals.
Thank you, and can you please call the roll?
Yep. All right. Just noting, I've heard from Commissioner Colvin Garcia, who will be out today. And as always, if you can state where you are calling in from. Commissioner Berkowitz.
Here from my home in Ann Arbor.
Councilmember Briggs.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Mentioned Commissioner Colvin Garcia is unable to make it today. Commissioner Hans.
Here from my home in Ann Arbor.
Vice Chair Harp.
Here from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Levin.
From my home in Ann Arbor.
Chair McKenna.
Here from Sacramento, California.
Commissioner Mirsky.
Here from my home in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Overpeck.
Here from my home in Ann Arbor.
Councilmember Radina.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Sendra.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Smith.
Here in Ann Arbor.
And Commissioner Zittelman.
Here in Ann Arbor.
All right, Chair, you got a quorum.
Thank you so much. All right, is there a motion to approve the agenda as posted, and a second?
So moved.
Commissioner Mirsky, thank you. And a second, Commissioner Berkowitz, thank you so much. Commissioners, please raise your hand if you want to propose any changes at this time to the agenda. Okay, great, seeing none. All those in favor of approving the agenda as posted, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Okay, unanimous, the agenda is approved, and we'll move on. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as posted?
Also, so moved.
Commissioner Mirsky, thank you. And a second, please. Councilmember Briggs, thank you so much. Commissioners, please raise your hand if you want to propose any changes to the minutes as currently posted. Okay, seeing none, please, all those in favor of approving the minutes as posted, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Okay, unanimous movement to approve the minutes. Thank you so much. In that case, we will, the minutes are approved, and we'll move to public input. I'm excited to hear public input today. This is an opportunity for people to speak for up to 3 minutes. If you're watching on CTN, please call 888-788-0099 or 877-853-5247 5247 and enter the meeting ID 956-8718-7876. This information is also displayed on the meeting agenda and video feed. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand one by one using the last 3 digits of your phone number. To electronically raise your hand to indicate your desire to speak, please press *9 on your phone. You will hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any background sound so that we may hear you clearly. And please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments. Joe, do we have anyone on the line?
I do not currently. I'm going to give it 15 seconds or so just in case.
Okay.
I see we have one caller who has come in. They don't have their hand up. So just in case. I'm going to promote them. Caller ending in 010. Caller, if you're speaking, you are muted. All right. I think we're going to move forward for now. There'll be another opportunity towards the end if folks are interested in public input at that time.
Sounds good. Thanks, Joe. All right. We're going to hear from Julie Roth today, speaking about the Home Energy Advisor pilot program. And I'm so happy to welcome Julie. Hi, Julie. Thanks for joining us. You can take it away.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Claire. Thanks for having me, Energy Commission. So I'm Julie Roth. I manage the energy team of the Office of Sustainability, and I've been working with some partners on a Home Energy Advisor pilot program. And I'm here to share with you what the results of that are. So pretty excited about it. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay. No, I don't want all of that fancy stuff here. I'm going to try that again. Apologies. You can just see this weird presenter view, can't you?
Right. Yeah. The first time it was shared. Yeah.
Now, can't you still?
You're not currently sharing.
Cool. That's fun. Let's try this again. I know what I will do. Let's try it this way. Nope, still presenter view.
I think if you go up to that display settings in the top, you can swap presenter and slideshow.
Awesome. Joe, you're a genius. Okay, fantastic. So we'll get started. The A20 Home Energy Advisor program, what is it? It is a cost-free one-stop shop for Ann Arbor residents to obtain help with projects to improve the energy efficiency and decarbonize their homes. And so this is what I'm going to be talking about today. Before I do that, I want to kind of put the program in context, because it's important to understand why we're doing this and in what landscape and context we're doing this. So some of this is obviously going to be old news to you, but for anyone who happens to be watching, I want to also put it into context. So as we all know, the A20 plan has 7 overarching strategies, the first 3 of which have to do directly with energy. Number 1 is powering our grid with 100% renewable energy. 2, switching all our appliances and our vehicles from fossil fuels to that now clean electricity. And 3, significantly reducing how much electricity we're using with deep energy efficiency work. And the Home Energy Advisor Program really fits all 3 of these with a specific attention in number 2 and number 3. So there are enormous barriers to tackling this problem of our residential sector and fully electrifying and decarbonizing our residential sector. Some of these barriers that I'm listing here include the contractor network and supply chain. Having individuals who are confident and competent in doing this work, trusted partners to be able to get information and bids, individuals who are doing the work well and want to do the work. We have barriers of costs, obviously upfront costs as well as operational costs, familiarity with the technology. We're all very used to having gas furnaces and gas stoves and gas everything. We're not so familiar with the alternatives, and that can be a significant barrier to adoption. And then the big one in my mind, although they're all big, is the complexity of the entire process and kind of where do I start. So I want to make sure you understand that we've been working on these barriers since the beginning of this, and the Energy Advisor Program fits into the landscape of the barriers we've already been working on. In fact, I don't think we could have successfully brought forward an Energy Advisor Program without having started to do some of this other work. So in regards to the contractor network, we've worked with our green bank, our state's green bank, Michigan Saves, to establish an electrification badge program for the Michigan Saves affiliated contractors. So it's a green bank, but they have a contractor network. And we have been doing some pretty deep and ongoing contractor engagement work so that we can learn who is out there in our community and our region doing good work around electrification. We can develop relationships with those folks. We can incentivize contractors on the fence about why this work is important, and we can make sure that at very least, to the best of our ability, that contractors have the potential to learn and sort of de-myth their own preconceptions about electrification work. So we've established this electrification badge program so that residents can go to the website and find contractors who have been through extra training and are committed to the electrification journey. We do individual contractor meetings. I go to sales meetings with Michigan Saves, their team, and meet with and talk to the sales folks. We have contractor convenings at the city on an annual basis. We attend conferences as staff to talk to contractors as well as distributors and manufacturers on a regular basis. We have our electrification expo that we do annually now, which brings contractors and residents together. So lots of engagement. This work is ongoing. It is by no means done, and we're not there, but we at least have the framework started, and we have a small but I would say skilled and competent and motivated contractor base to start with. So the costs are obviously always come up when we're talking about any kind of transition, and certainly decarbonization is no exception. So we've been granted this fantastic federal program, the IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, where tax credits are available now and are substantial, and then rebates, which have been very slow to roll out, as we all know. Looks like they are coming probably in October of 2024. We have our own Ann Arbor climate millage rebates that are coming out probably, hopefully in the spring. We have Michigan Saves financing, which, as I've already mentioned, Michigan Saves, they have a loan loss reserve. and deliver unsecured loans, not based on, you're not refinancing your home, and they can bundle loans for multiple projects at once. And we do a ongoing and constant grant funding and program stacking to support our most energy burdened households to the best that we can. So we're working hard to continue to drive down the costs of this work. Then there's familiarity. People have a hard time talking about or investigating or adopting technology that they've never even seen. And we have more work to do in this space for sure, but we have done workshops, online workshops, town halls. We have our expo where people can come and engage with the equipment and contractors. We've done tabling at other events. We've had earned media. We have a sticker campaign for heat pumps with that little sticker you see on the screen. Next time I'll be a heat pump you can put on your furnace or your water heater. And we've also given them out to our contractors with the electrification badge. So when they're out servicing your equipment, they can talk to you about it. And if you're interested, you can sort of put that little sticker pledge on your equipment. So continued ongoing engagement to help improve familiarity with the equipment. So now we get to complexity, which was that last barrier. And certainly even people who are highly motivated to do this work, they're motivated by climate action, they're motivated by the climate crisis, have all kinds of issues with adoption. They don't know where to start or if they can afford it. Or what is a heat pump? Who can I trust to talk about these things? Do I really want to call someone who's just going to try to sell me something? What are the incentives? What do I qualify for? Is this going to make my house more expensive, less expensive? What are the health impacts? So this is the space in which we looked to add to our sort of smorgasbord of programs to help folks do this work in the residential sector, the Home Energy Advisor. So there's been a desire for quite some time to provide a concierge type service to Ann Arbor residents to help reduce that complexity and ease the transition. So in early 2022, the city, our staff worked with other cities and community-based organizations and RMI, previously Rocky Mountain Institute, in an electrification cohort where cities and CBOs came together, all of whom were interested in some sort of electrification program in their cities. They took many different forms and shapes, and it is through this cohort that I joined with EcoWorks and Michigan Saves as my sort of community-based organizations that we developed the Home Energy Advisor concept. So after working through that cohort with monthly meetings and support from RMI, we ended up contracting Elevate and EcoWorks, completed the program design in the winter, spring of 2023, and the pilot of the program in the summer, this past summer. I will go into sort of where we are post-pilot towards the end of the presentation. So what is the advisor? It offers multiple services. So primarily it offers one-on-one advising support, hence Home Energy Advisor. The idea is that you can call the Home Energy Advisor service with whatever brings you there. So it could be my water heater is nearing the end of its useful life and I'm pretty sure it's going to die and I'm pretty sure there's something else I could be replacing with, but I don't know what that is. Or it could be my upstairs is cold in the winter and drafty and I'm miserable and my bills are high. Or it can be, I have mold remediation. I want to improve the health of my home. Or it could be, I want to electrify and get off gas and decarbonize entirely. I want to get to net zero and I haven't the slightest idea where to start. Whatever brings you to the Home Energy Advisor. So the Home Energy Advisor will offer advice on that question that you come with and assistance in selecting projects and in coaching you through projects. It will offer bid reviews if you want them. If you request a contractor bid review, you get an estimate for something, you don't understand it, or you don't know how to compare multiple ones. They will help you understand your bids. But in addition to all of this, you're getting what we're calling a path to zero. So it's your own individualized path to decarbonization. So you may have come for a water heater and you will get your water heater sort of coaching, but you will also leave with a path so that we know that one of the barriers to doing this work is that most large appliances like furnaces and water heaters are replaced at the time of failure, when it's sort of an emergency situation. So people don't have time to research what the options are. That if there's, time between when your equipment dies and when you're going to replace it because it needs to be ordered or sized or anything like that, you don't have time because you're cold and you need your heat on. And so usually people just end up getting whatever they can get without a whole lot of research and thought. So the idea is, if we have individualized paths, that people will be able to think ahead and plan for the future. So when my furnace goes, when my water heater goes, I have done some research. I know approximately when it's going to happen. I can try to do some of this replacement prior to the time of the equipment failure. In addition, the pilot did for everybody, or most everybody who will come through the program will have a home, kind of an energy audit plus, right? So many of you on this commission have had home energy audits. Some of you may not have, but essentially this is an assessment of your home to determine your weatherization potential and your energy usage and opportunities for improvement. And this energy assessment that the program was doing is similar to the one that's been piloted in the Bryant neighborhood, where there is an in-person option or a virtual option. This enables scaling and cost sort of reduction if you can do some of these assessments virtually. They're still very robust. They don't involve blower door tests, but they do involve the homeowner walking around their home with their phone and an assessor on the other end of the line, and they taking pictures and they're evaluating the home sort of virtually as opposed to in person, where an in-person assessment can be done if the homeowner has mobility issues or language barriers or can't deal with technology, those sorts of things. The fact of the lack of a blower door is compensated for by the usage of individuals' utility data. So the residents provide all of their utility data, and that can be put into the energy model along with the assessment to determine the likelihood of needing air sealing, essentially. And we can talk more about that at some point. But essentially, the idea is you're getting one-on-one support for decarbonization projects. You're getting a home decarbonization assessment and an individualized path so that you can plan ahead and know sort of what your next short, medium, and long term look like. It also enables people to be able to find efficiencies. For example, if I have an electrician coming to my home because I need a new 240 for a piece of equipment, maybe I'm maxing out my panel and it's time to talk about a smart panel or an increased service upgrade. And maybe it's best to do that when the electrician's already there rather than calling them out again and again, that sort of thing. So we piloted this program over this past summer. And this is just sort of another kind of summary. Everybody gets project advice, this virtual assessment that I talked about, a Snug Pro report, which is basically the audit report that is an energy model of your home that the utility data is used to produce, as well as your audit. Any bid reviews that you want, and advice on specific rebates and incentives and financing and program eligibility based on your situation that you may be eligible for the project that you're looking to do. And then deeper levels of service could be provided, as I mentioned. So this is what a participant journey would look like. You complete an interest form. You have an initial consultation with the home energy advisor who talks to you about what you're interested in. Complete the virtual or on-site assessment. You receive the assessment and the path to zero, and then guidance as needed, depending on the project that you're selecting. So in the pilot, we started with 14 buildings or 14 residents in Ann Arbor. We didn't do widespread, email blasts to everybody. We didn't publish this widely because we wanted to make sure that we were targeting various demographics that represented demographics of Ann Arbor, and also had different ownership models. So we had homeowners and renters, and we had some multifamily buildings, co-op, a townhouse, some single family homes, and different ages of buildings, and also interest in what they might be calling about. So because we wanted that sort of diversity in use cases, we kind of targeted our outreach with these kind of specific community partners. And the pilot participants, it looks like we had about 11 single family homes, 1 multi-family unit, and 2 sort of condos or co-ops. We had mostly homeowners with some renter / landlord participants. We had a variety of income levels. So this 46% were over $100,000 for their household income. We had about 23% at less than 50, and then 31% between those two numbers. So kind of a diversity of income levels as well. Interestingly, our pilot partners, Elevate and EcoWorks, collected some of the questions people were coming with and started to develop a list of resources that people would need or could benefit from in this program, which was part of the reason for doing the pilot to begin with. So these included everything from utility rate structures to questions about bidirectional charging and battery backups, to understanding peak time. There's a lot of questions along those things, to training on how to use a programmable thermostat, or plaster contractors, which isn't something we thought about. But if you're going to do work that involves insulating or rewiring, you may need plaster contractors. And then certainly lots of information about cold climate heat pumps as compared to geothermal, things like that. So it was interesting to start to gather a list of what people were calling about, what their questions were. So this is what the sort of deliverables looked like to the individuals who participated in the program. They would get what we call the path to zero. This was customized. So starts out with kind of the basic demographics, what the participant was calling about in this example: weatherization, electrification, and financing, and some of their biggest concerns. In this case, someone on a fixed income, they have a downstairs bathroom that's cold and drafty, condo association limitations, etc. Just kind of a big picture. Starts out with a big sort of summary slide with kind of check marks about what, and essentially some of this would be here and some of it would not be here, depending on the individual person, outlining everything that they would need to do essentially to get to net zero home. And then a more targeted list of short-term, medium-term, and long-term projects. I'm certainly not putting all of this in here. These are just example slides for some of these. So there would be a slide like this for short-term, a slide like this for medium and long-term. But the short-term projects, excuse me, would then be, and this is like this year, would then be elucidated in greater detail in the next slides. So for example, this would be a programmable thermostat project. So you would be delivered this information where you understand why it matters, where you have links to more information, where specifically you can learn about what tax credits or rebates or income qualified programs that are specifically applicable to this project and you, and kind of where you start in terms of looking for one. In every case, you can always come back to the energy advisor with questions or after you receive bids or any kind of clarification. And this wasn't just sent to people. This was delivered with a meeting. So, so that people are getting walked through the path to zero as well and answering questions at that time. Here's another example. This would be a short-term project for insulation and air leaking. Again, information on why, links to fact sheets and other information that was specific. In this example, they did a blower door test of the home and identified areas where air sealing was problematic. That's included later in their packet. And again, live links to finding a contractor and how to go about doing it, eligible programs, tax credits and rebates, financing, etc. And just one more example, the pilot included a helioscope assessment of solar potential, and that is included in the path to zero if it's appropriate for that particular individual roof. And so this is just an example of that. And then as part of the energy modeling, of course, a load profile is established and your annual energy consumption, your fuel mix, and what it could look like, sort of now versus your goal. So it's sort of a summary slide of your energy consumption and goals. So that is the sort of like actionable portion of deliverables for the participants. Where there were projects described, links that are live, access to resources. But to dive deeper, each individual project or home, I should say, has a Snug Pro report, which is the full audit or decarbonization assessment with much more detail. For anyone who's ever received one of these sorts of things, it is a lot of detail and can be pretty overwhelming for the average resident, which is why it sort of comes as an, oh yeah, and here's all the information if you want it. But we don't anticipate this is the first deliverable that people would automatically go to, which is why we have the path to zero and the more actionable slides for projects. And of course, the Energy Advisor Program would be a resource. They would have a website, which was not designed yet because this was a pilot, that would have videos and links and resources as well in terms of home decarbonization. We could keep it up to date. So that, and I'm sorry, I can't see anybody because I'm presenting. So I don't know if anyone's has questions, but I will obviously take them very shortly. But next steps. So the idea was to complete the pilot, learn from the pilot, design, make changes to the structure, which we did. We worked with Elevate and EcoWorks to see what went well, where could efficiencies be made, what didn't go well, and they finalized a pilot report and recommendations for full deployment. RFP was issued in October. That includes that pilot report, and those links are live on the slides. We did receive proposals and are currently in the process of reviewing those proposals and interviewing firms for community-wide deployment. As I mentioned on the slide, the bids came in significantly higher than our budget for deploying this program. So what we've done is asked the folks who have proposed whose proposals we liked. We narrowed it down. We asked them to come back to us with refinement of scope and scale to fit within the budget. We haven't seen that yet. They both were very interested in continuing to pursue the project, and were very eager and willing to come back and present what they could do within scope and scale. So at this point, I don't know more than that. I don't know what those proposals are going to look like. I don't know what's going to be different and what we're going to be missing, what we could refine or efficiencies we could find, and whether it will continue to, within our scope and scale, provide what it is that we're looking for to fill that gap of complexity. So TBD, I guess, to be determined how that goes. I'm excited to see what they come with. I'm excited to see what's possible. Also acknowledging that, if we can't do what we want to within our budget, then we have two choices. Either we don't do it, or we try to fundraise and grant fund and find more ways to raise money in order to be able to deploy this fully. In addition, worth noting to you is that the Home Energy Advisor is very much linked to the Home Energy Rebate Program, which we are also currently in the process of interviewing and reviewing bids for, because we would like to see the rebates, especially the rebates tied, the rebates that might be available for things like heat pumps and some of that bigger equipment that is complicated and requires weatherization and load calculations and all of these things, to be delivered, not just handed out, but to be tied with going through the Home Energy Advisor program, so that we're not just giving out a rebate, but we're also giving education and support and advice and guidance. If that's the case and these two are tied together, there could be efficiencies in terms of cost. We're still figuring out if we're income qualifying people, where does that live? These sorts of things. It's kind of an active design process that we can't quite, I can't tell you exactly what it's going to look like at the end of the day. So I think those are all of my slides. I know that's a lot of information, and I know you're going to have questions I can't answer, so that's always fun, but I will do my best to answer any questions that you do have and receive any feedback and your thoughts about this, because I am really interested in hearing what your thoughts are about all of this.
Yeah, totally. Thank you so much, Julie. I have thoughts and I'm excited to share, but I wanted to open up the floor. Let's anybody who has thoughts and questions, please let them fly. Commissioner Peck.
Yeah, I'm very impressed, and I think this looks like a really great program. I'm just wondering where the contractors get their training, and do we have sufficient training available in Michigan?
Which kind of, are you talking about HVAC contractors?
Yeah, any ones that the advisors might recommend.
Oh, okay. So the contractor network, we have, so it's a bigger question. So if you're talking about HVAC specifically, because those are the folks that where it's sort of most complicated, every HVAC contractor that installs heat pumps has to have certification from the manufacturer of the heat pump that it installs. So for example, if you're a Mitsubishi contractor, Mitsubishi has to sign off and you have to go through their training about their heat pump. So they've at least had that. Then beyond that, we have it with the Michigan Saves contractor network, the program that we designed, that we kind of co-designed with Michigan Saves and CEE, which is a Center for Energy Environment out in Minnesota, who has a similar program. They worked with us to design this 5-module training. And that's not a technical training. That is more of a, why do you want to do this? sales kind of pitches, but also demythifying, right? So we're still getting contractors that come out and say things like, you're just moving the smokestack. Why do you want to electrify? I had a energy auditor in my house, totally confused about why I would want to electrify. Like, no matter how many times I told him my goal is to get rid of gas, and he just looking at me, he just couldn't understand. And so the things he was telling me about why I wouldn't want to do this, we're not really excited about having energy auditors telling people why they don't want to get rid of, why they don't want to electrify. So essentially, we designed this program for all contractors to go through, so that at least the basics on, what people are currently saying about gas being clean or safe or moving the smokestack, all those things that we hear, cold heat pumps don't work in cold climates, all these things they're met with the research and the data that contradicts that. In addition, if you have the electrification badge, you're probably someone who wants to do this work, because there are a lot of HVAC contractors who have no interest in doing this work at all. And that's fine. They can continue to do the work that they're doing. And we don't need everybody in the space. We need the ones who are very qualified in the space. So all of that said, we also are looking to do some degree of quality assurance in the process. The question always becomes like, well, is it the home energy advisor that's going to be doing some kind of QA? Is it the Michigan Saves program that is going to be doing some kind of QA? Is it the rebate administrator that's going to be doing QA on the rebates they've administered? So it's still a work in progress. Michigan Saves, I've spoken with them just this week. They are revamping their contractor badge program, electrification badge program for 2024, re-recording some of their modules to update to new information, new research that's out there, and also having some additional QA. So essentially contractors having to submit manual J's, possibly manual D's prior to getting their badge, or in order to maintain their badge, and also having to do a number of heat pumps that are not just heat pump to heat pump or electric resistance to heat pump, but actual fuel switching, so they can demonstrate that they've been in this space. So ongoing, I don't know, that was a long answer to your question. I hope it answered your question.
Thank you.
Commissioner Smith.
Yes, thank you. I have a few questions, and thank you for your time, Julie. This is a very helpful overview. It's been great to see the progress since the inception of this program. I'd be interested in kind of building off of Commissioner Peck's question, understanding kind of any collaborative efforts, with Michigan Saves, potentially even with look at to DTE Energy's Home Energy Assessment Program, as we look at things like collaboration in terms of contractor training, kind of the visits themselves to create, efficiencies with those rebates, and again, kind of the contractor, going into the home lead generation. Just would be interested if you could speak to any of those efforts, again, around collaboration with other partners.
Absolutely. So two things that jump right to mind. Interestingly, I found out approximately maybe 3 weeks ago that DTE very quietly discontinued their home energy, their free home energy assessment program, where they used to come on site, replace light bulbs, do, pipe wrap and so forth, which I was surprised to hear. So that there's not going to be a lot of alignment there. That said, some of the firms that are proposing on our home energy advisor service are folks that have worked directly on that program with DTE and consumers programs for home energy assessments. Ours is much more in depth and robust in terms of what we're attempting to do, but so that collaboration couldn't really be if they sort of stopped their program. That said, there's a new group called the Michigan Heat Pump Collaborative, And I keep talking about HVAC and heat pumps, and this is much bigger than HVAC and heat pumps. And I know this, it's just that some of these things are not that complicated. You know, insulation and air sealing, you have to make sure that you're spot checking and it's done well. And you do, you know, oftentimes pre and post blower doors, but it's not that complicated compared to the HVAC space, which is newer and more complicated. So anyway, there's the Michigan Heat Pump Collaborative, and they formed as a sort of spin-off of the Midwest Heat Pump Collaborative, and they are utility aligned. And there is now a training series around from that collaborative that where contractors can get trained and certified as Michigan Heat Pump Collaborator, whatever. And Michigan Saves has been working with them to allow for the contractors to go through that training plus one of the Michigan Saves modules instead of all 5 and still become badged. And then they will be in the badged program and contractors that we can, you know, continue to support and work with and incentivize and drive leads to and do QA for. One more thing in terms of collaboration is that the state of Michigan, as they roll out their IRA program, is also interested in contractor networks and QA. And actually, because of the work that we've done with Michigan Saves on this badge program, has been talking to Michigan Saves about being the contractor network for the whole state as the IRA rebates are rolled out. So that's really exciting. And I think it's because of some of this work that we've done on the front end in Ann Arbor, and that collaboration and that potential gives me great hope, because it also may come with resources, which would also be great. Because as much money as we have, we need more. We always need more.
Yeah, absolutely. Very helpful and insightful. I had another question. I'd just be curious to understand if there was any pilots kind of evaluation, if you're able to kind of interview or survey, you know, any of the participants to understand, you know, learnings, you know, what are the successes, where are there opportunities for improvement as you seek to scale this program?
Absolutely. Great question. And I didn't include that in the slides, but there were surveys multiple times along the path, kind of checking in. And that was one of the kind of agreements of the pilot participants, that they were co-creating this with us. They weren't just on the receiving end. We really wanted their feedback. We really wanted to understand what worked, what landed, what didn't, etc. We didn't get as robust information from that as we thought we might. We got a lot of people who really liked the energy advisor they worked with, who was this just remarkable woman who knows everything and is very warm and approachable. So that was mostly the feedback that we got. So it wasn't as useful as we thought, but we do have some, and it was somewhat helpful.
Great. Commissioner Zittleman?
Yeah, thank you, Julie, for presenting tonight and taking time to be here with us. I really appreciate it. I just had a question about, I saw in the last slide, it said that you guys are considering how much to include like multifamily housing in this program. Like, are there also considerations around how much group housing will be included and reached out to?
How much group housing, is that what you said?
Yeah, group housing.
So that's it. That was sort of an aside. It's really tricky because it's very, very important that we include renters and renter landlord pairs and multifamily housing in our programs. We cannot, I mean, we're 55% renters in Ann Arbor, and it's a massive equity issue. I would very much want to have a renter path, because it's going to look different if you have a cooperative landlord versus a landlord not interested in this work. And so I think that's kind of a non-negotiable for me in terms of the program. It has to have a renter path, and it's not going to be as robust in terms of what you can do in capital improvements, but you can still make progress, and we need to have that. That said, large multifamily buildings can be very expensive to address and do assessments of. And the 2030 district already exists in the commercial and large multifamily space. So, when what are the cutoffs? When can we refer to the 2030 district? If we have large landlords that can afford this type of thing, is that really who we need to be spending a large chunk of the money on? Probably not. So it's that sort of thing. And I'm not even sure. Like I said, we haven't had the proposals back with the refined scope and scale. So it was just things that I was throwing out there that might be areas that we could navigate, efficiencies.
Thank you.
Sure.
Great. Vice Chair Hart.
Hi, Julie. Thank you for all of that. And it's I know a tremendous amount of work has gone into trying to integrate all of the things and sort of keep all these things sort of spinning at the same time and think about the process. And I really appreciate also the swim lanes diagramming that went into the pilot report as well, and sort of thinking about the back end as well as the front end of the service design and how sort of important that is for sort of pulling all the pieces together. I want to zoom out a little bit, like at a 30,000 foot view a little bit, and sort of ask your perspective about sort of the framing and the communication of some of this. And partially what I'm trying to hold in my head is this report. And then also at our last Energy Commission meeting, we had the presentation of the Ann Arbor Energy Futures Survey, which also sort of identified priorities in terms of resilience, cost, and reliability as the sort of top outcomes for that survey. And I'd wonder about your thoughts about how to bring that kind of sort of resident focus priorities and goals into the sort of framing and goals of these kinds of reports. And I'm thinking particularly like on slide number 2 and then slide number 18, which sort of outlines your path to zero. What I started thinking about is, how might we think about your path to resilience, your path to maintaining costs, your path to reliability as a way to get to zero? And in part, that sort of reframes also what the sort of choices might be in the landscaping and the road mapping in ways that might not necessarily always prioritize sort of technology adoption, but also sort of the technology road mapping itself, which is what are the pieces that you have to do to get to the other longer term thing, but also the sort of social and practice-based side that sort of also accompanies some of the technological and sort of adaptation choices as well. And so I'd be curious about your thoughts of like how we might also sort of work at these levels of Ann Arbor's overall goals, but also sort of individual resident household goals and sort of where they're trying to do over the long term.
I love that question so much. I love everything about that question. And I hope that you can write all of that down and send it to me in an email so I can think about it even more deeply. I loved everything about your question. So we have thought about this, and what I'm presenting to you is like all the nuts and bolts and the big picture. And what we're trying to do is create something that is not overwhelming for people and is meeting people where they are at. And so the idea that you can call up and say, I have mold, and we'll just start there, right? Let's just deal with that. Let's get you remediated. Let's deal with your health and safety issues. And then on this back end, have this kind of path to zero. The idea is that the Home Energy Advisor program will have your SnugPro report, your home assessment, all of the information about your home ongoing. And so when you come back, or if you come back, they already know you. And they've already been a trusted source of information to get rid of your mold. And, now you're looking to maybe, improve your insulation, and they're there as that trusted advisor. So I think you're absolutely right. First off, that that people are coming to this for different reasons and with different goals in mind. And the study that you're talking about was talking specifically about energy and where you're getting your energy from. But I think you're right that it will translate into what they want in their homes in terms of resilience and health and affordability and clean energy, right? So I think it's really astute questions. And as we are designing the full rollout, I think I'd like to think deeply about the way you framed it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I'll for sure share that back too.
That would be great. Thank you for that.
Hey, Councilmember Briggs.
Thank you. And thank you, Julie. This is amazing. I'm so excited for this to get rolled out to the entire community. I think it's just something that is what people have been waiting for. You've already spoken a little bit to some of my question, but it's on the evaluation front, but also just kind of the follow up. So I imagine folks getting this, and obviously they came for what their immediate needs, what they're thinking about, but we care about getting them down that full path. And so I'm curious what sort of pieces are being thought about in terms of checkups or check-ins. We go to the dentist every 6 months, hopefully. Just what are we anticipating our ability to sort of touch base with folks after they've connected with us?
Yeah, that's another really good question. I don't think we've thought very carefully about what that might look like, follow-ups that might be other than passive, other than perhaps a trickle campaign where, people without having an onslaught are opting into or could opt out of a mailing list of reminders or new research that comes out or new resources that exist, that we can continue to sort of trickle out that information from the home energy advisor so that they're reminded that they exist and that they're there. I don't think I've thought much about active management. I anticipate an onslaught of interest when it first launches. I think it's going to, that's one of the things that we've been talking to about the firms about rollout is what is your ability to scale up and scale down? It's very complicated. If we think we're going to have huge rollout and then things may, subside and then come up again, and how are you going to deal with those capacity changes? So I think it's interesting to think about incorporating strategic follow-ups at 6 months after a project, check back in, that kind of thing. And we are still designing our kind of, what are we tracking, right? The metrics that we'll be tracking, and satisfaction is certainly one of them. And so there's no doubt that there will be satisfaction surveys and that kind of thing that come out however many months after somebody has contacted the home energy advisor. But in terms of moving on to next steps, I guess I haven't really thought deeply about that. Especially because now I'm already worried that we can't do all the things that we want to do as it is.
Right, I know.
Any of you are sitting on like a whole bucket of money that you want to just pour into this, because we are interested. Anyway.
Yeah, no, it's a expanding scope, probably not narrowing it. It does seem though that is, in terms of the 14 participants that were initially engaged, a way that they could help inform the process moving forward, while kind of touching base with them that's not such a big task. Understanding how are they following through on the recommendations, and what sort of support do they need along the way, and some of those common themes may help to move us forward. And then this is a very small thing, but when on the slides it's where it's pointing to people to where they should go, where they could go for follow-up. And I think the example was around the thermostat. One thing I guess I hope we would do is also identify any locally owned stores in the vicinity, and maybe identify them. Like I'm thinking Stadium Harbor, for example. But anything that we might be able to point folks back to the local economy and local places, and then also just let them know that if you're not carrying this, might be something you might want to think about. For some of these pieces that we know over and over again, we're going to be pointing people to. It would be great to be supporting those in our local economy for this, and not so much the Amazon.
It's fun talking to you guys, because you're thinking about all the things I'm thinking about. So we are actively actually meeting with some of our local retailers right now about co-branding. Like, I want a big section of Big George's to be the 820 section, and I want, we want. So we're talking with our retailers. It's complicated, they're they sell many, many things, right? They sell appliances that we aren't going to sort of give rebates for and incentives for, and others that we do. And how do we kind of navigate that and bring value to both lead generations to our local businesses, as well as trusted retailers that will stock and have available and have sales people that are very well versed in induction stoves and in, you know, non-gas options for fireplace inserts and all of these kinds of things. So that's another thing, part of my work plan that I'm working on and workflow that I'm working on. So my job is so fun, I have to say. It's all great. But yes.
Amazing. Thank you.
Great. Commissioner Mirsky?
Thank you. Thank you, Julie. Julie, I posed last Friday a number of questions that I sent to you and to Joe, as well as to the other energy commissioners. As best as I can tell, none of those have been addressed yet this evening. I'd like to throw out several other questions, and it's up to you and Chair McKenna to decide whether or not any of those get addressed tonight. But I think these are important questions, especially we're here. Our mission is to advise our council members. And so I think the questions that I posed and the answers to those are extremely important. I would also pose the following questions. And I'm just going to rattle them off, and we can decide, or you can decide, how we handle any of these questions or whether they're even answered at all. How many years is the contract proposed to be? What is the annual proposed budget for the Home Energy Advisor Program versus the budget being considered for incentives? What is the estimated cost per consultation from beginning to end on average? And I realize that will probably range from, $20 for, a few minutes to maybe hundreds of dollars or even more if it's over a whole journey, like has been mapped out. What is the capacity going to be? And I know that that's going to be dependent finally on the scope of the program and the final bids. And if there is a capacity constraint, who is going to be accepted in terms of being served and who is going to be essentially unable to be served? And I'll pose two questions. Consider someone on the east side of Ann Arbor. I grew up near Pittsfield School, not too far from Bryant. That's relatively low income neighborhood. Someone calls there and they start, as you mentioned, with a mold problem, but they probably have a whole lot of other issues that need to be addressed. And then you have someone who calls from Ann Arbor Hills that lives in a $1.5 million house, and they want to decarbonize their house, and they're paying $26,000 in taxes a year, and they think that they should be serviced extremely well. Who are you going to serve? And then finally, I'd like to understand if there's potentially any incongruity in the sense that we've passed now a home energy rating disclosure program that is based on the U.S. Department of Energy's home energy score. And now this program is centered around, as is the Bryant program, and presumably if that program is rolled out in other neighborhoods, on a different assessment. So there's a whole slew of questions. And I think if you were to address everything that I posed in my email and just the ones that I posed tonight, we would be here far later than any of us, myself included, would want to be here. So I think our council members need to think about the answers to these questions, and they need to be discussed in consultation with OSI before any contract is finally signed. So thank you.
Thank you, John. So yeah, I can address some of these quickly. The questions from the email, some of them are reflected here, and a lot of them were around the metrics that we'll be tracking. And because we're still sort of designing this, that the metrics tracking seems to be, it's something that we've put into the RFP and that we're discussing with the contractors. It's not going to be a big lift. Once we're doing the work, what do we want to track? Where are we putting it? I'm not terribly concerned about that. I'm also not terribly concerned with meeting the goal that we had set out in A20 of the number of people served. I think we're just going to hit that. I'm not concerned about it. I think it was 2,500 I don't remember the number, but I'm not terribly concerned about it.
It's 2,500 by 2025. So in 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, and if we don't quite hit it, then we don't quite hit it. We'll, do the best we can. In regards to the contract length, it's written for 3 years, and then reassess and, regroup with the ability to exit, obviously, as all of our contracts. The budget and the what everything came in, I don't feel comfortable talking about because we're negotiating actively with the firms right now, and there's more than one firms, and so I prefer to hold off on that until we've selected somebody and we know what we're moving forward with. And the cost we did have in the proposals that we received, or actually I think the initial pilot report from the pilot, sort of what the cost looked like per household in terms of doing the whole assessment. So all of that was delivered to us as sort of a cost. So we have those kinds of numbers, but it's also stuff that we're playing with, right? That's what that firm would charge us. But what if we went to the market for part of this? What if we did some of it in-house? We're still sort of playing with that and trying to decide how can we create this in a way that we can afford. In terms of equity and capacity, that's a no-brainer. I don't think we have a prioritization framework in terms of who we are not serving, because we're planning on serving everybody. We plan on starting outreach and launch in our most vulnerable neighborhoods with the highest energy burdens. So we have talked about, instead of doing an enormous huge public launch where we know we're going to be inundated and we know who is going to be coming to us because they're already asking about it, that we are doing more of a soft launch. We know there's really no such thing as a soft launch and people hear about it anyway, but we're thinking about, okay, soft launch, and we go to our community action networks and we go to our faith-based communities and we go to our energy burdened communities and we offer this service and we go and we talk to them. And that's part of what we're requesting of the home energy advisor also, is to come table at events, come know our community, and come talk to people in person. So we're very much aware of that. And one of the things that we asked the folks to come forward with is, what would be your plan if we hit a wait list situation? How do you handle a wait list? How would you do a wait list? How would you prioritize, or that kind of thing? Because there may be times where we have a wait list and people have to wait. And the last question that you asked just now was the alignment with HURD and the home energy score. And that's a really astute question. Also, I love this group. We're talking about that constantly right now. So right now, the Department of Energy does not enable a home energy score, HES score, to be obtained even by an HES certified assessor from a virtually obtained audit. It wasn't always clear that they didn't. And at the very beginning of all of this, the information we had from trusted sources was that they would allow for that. However, we are engaging with the DOE on that topic to see whether there's room to move, because the assessments that we're doing are more robust than a typical HES assessment. And we think that if an HES assessor is involved and it's a virtual assessment, that we don't see a lot of reason why they wouldn't allow for that. So we're talking to the DOE to see if that's possible. If it's not possible widespread, is it possible to pilot it in Ann Arbor? Or do we start thinking about whether whether we have a slightly different assessment for the HERD program, but that's trickier because we want the workforce to be able to do an HES score for HERD. And if we have some sort of HES plus assessment, that's going to be more difficult to sort of farm out to that. So in active investigation, and we're very much like Commissioner, who was it, who had my favorite question? Where did you go? Harp, Commissioner Harp, how he said that there are so many moving parts that we are trying to do all at the same time between the rebate and the home energy advisor and the HERD and the home energy assessment scores. And it's like gears. It's like you're trying to build a bike while you're riding the bike. And that's kind of what it feels like. But we are very much aware of that issue and trying hard to figure out a way around it.
Do I remember correctly that the average consultation cost was estimated around $400? Does that sound right?
That could be, but I don't remember.
Because
Yeah,
$400 times 2,500 is $1 million.
Oh yeah, no, but we're not paying for this by service. You know what I mean? Nobody would be billing per service offered, because people are going to be calling with just a question too.
Sure.
You know, it takes a 10-minute phone call. So that's not how we're looking at it.
Okay, thank you.
Great, and we'll wrap this up, Julie. I just have want to show you my appreciation. Just thank you for doing this work. It's incredibly complex, and it's very well timed. And I just looking at your work, you know, also working in this field, I'm really, really impressed as well for what you've put together. So thanks for doing that. I'm gonna ask you a quick question, which is around language and translation from the SNUG Pro report into the messaging that you're going to provide for each individual home. And this kind of comes from my research experience in asking people who have received audits, you know, kind of what do they do with that information. And a lot of people in my sample in Wayne and Washtenaw County said, I got so much from the auditor that was here and, you know, walking through and, you know, pointing out the thermal imaging and all that. The report, you know, I didn't really do anything with it. And so, you know, I don't know what a knee wall is. So when it says it's like knee wall, I'm not really sure, right, how to move forward. So just asking about kind of proofing of some of that language and who's doing that translating between the SNUG Pro. You know, you recognize that that's not the place where people are going to go get their information, but how do you translate that information and who's doing that and how do you proof the language?
Yeah, that's really that's a really good point as well. So I think that as we so first off, I agree with the assessor themselves is, you know, in that in person, whether it's in person or virtual, because even when you're walking around virtually, it can be the same sort of, it's a similar sort of information gathering with the assessor. But the idea is that those, you know, and this was in the pilot, what the deliverable looks like from the pilot, but it's a good question to take a look at what that deliverable looks like, maybe run it by, and that was part of the pilot, right? And the 14, run it by, does this land with you? How does this land? You know, do you understand this? Do you have questions? Does this make sense? And I think that really, if and when we launch this, we could probably look at the first X number of months as a pilot, a second pilot, a soft launch, however you want to do, and make sure that we are continually improving it and getting feedback from people who are participating in and improving it, because this is complicated. And like Commissioner Harp referenced, the back end, the swim lanes, what goes into this to try to make it an easy button, which is my whole goal, is to try to make this easy for people on the front end. The back end is so complicated. And you're right in pointing out that we have to make sure that we keep the easy button in the front. So, and translating the language is great. And if you want to take a look at it, we'd be happy once it's up and running, to have your guys' feedback about what the deliverables look like, what the process is like. You can go through it yourselves and, you know, provide feedback like everybody.
Totally. Yeah. I personally volunteer, and please reach out to us to proof the language, because that sounds fun.
Thank you.
It's my version of fun. Okay. Unless you have any more comments, questions for us, well, we can let you go. So let me know.
I don't, but thank you guys for your interest and for your support. This is complicated. It's an imperfect science/art, and we're working our tails off, and we're going to get it wrong a whole bunch of times also. So just bear that in mind as we you know, get it wrong and pivot and improve it and do it again. That's my expectation. So if that doesn't happen and it all rolls out beautifully and smoothly and we never have any complaints, then, you know, bonus. So
Cool.
Thanks to everybody.
Julie.
Bye-bye.
Fantastic. Thank you all for that amazing discussion. I think that was really fruitful. I'm excited to hear about that program as it moves forward. Okay, so we're going to move to commission business. I'm going to ask that we vote to open a discussion about the Energy Commission bylaws. So all those in favor of opening the meeting to a discussion for bylaws, please raise your hand and say aye. Okay, look, that looks unanimous to me, and so we're gonna move forward and open the meeting up for discussion. Does anybody have any comments on the bylaws that were posted, which I believe were last approved in 2021? Joe, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, and yeah, just for context, I can share these if needed for those who either haven't scrolled all the way to the end or anything like that. And as other commissioners have pointed out, we're supposed to review our bylaws once per year to make sure we're still okay with everything, and if not, to change things per the bylaws for editing the bylaws. The way it would work is you can propose amendments to be submitted in writing at this meeting. Those would then be submitted to the city attorney for review and then could be voted on for changing at the following meeting. So for this one here, talking about potential changes that could be, and if we have those would then be voted upon for actual adoption at a following meeting.
So Joe, is it correct that we won't vote to approve the bylaws tonight, and we'll wait to see if there are any, because you know something may come up after this in the next month. So
yeah, we would need to propose amendments today. So if people have amendments, propose them, and that is how that works.
Great. Councilmember Briggs, yes.
Not seeing other hands raised. Councilmember Radina and I have been chatting, and I think we've brought this to this commission before. We'd welcome some feedback on this. There's some inconsistency amongst the commissions that we serve on as liaison in terms of voting rights. And so some commissions we do have, council members have voting rights, some don't. My personal opinion on this is that these are commissions are advisory bodies to council, and so it's sort of odd for us to vote here and then vote again at the council table. But you know, if others feel, if the commission feels strongly that you want to maintain it, I think that Councilmember Radina had some potential amendment language that he thought he could circulate, and might have some additional thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, go ahead. Councilmember Radina, if you'd like to share.
Thanks. Yeah, and I don't actually have it pulled up, but I can try to pull it up quickly. Yeah, this is something we've talked about before, and it does create kind of there's an inconsistency as Councilmember Briggs noted, but there is also just, as she said, kind of this factor that you guys are advising us, and it would feel strange to me. We've never had a situation where it's been such a close vote that the council members are ultimately the ones making the decision. But you know, we have a voice at this body. We can speak and provide our guidance to you as needed, but it does seem a little strange that we would vote to advise ourselves and so this is, for me, I know that Councilmember Briggs has more where I think she has voting power. This is one of the very few bodies other than council itself where I do have a vote. On Renters Commission, which is newer, and I think on some of the others that I serve on, we are designated as non-voting members. And so I pulled up the Renters Commission language, and the way that they deal with this is under their membership section. They highlight the number of voting members, and then there's another section that has the commission has the following non-voting members and liaisons, and it specifically mentions 2 non-voting members who are representatives from the city council appointed by the city council, and then they have a number of other non-voting members who serve on their board, but that is a potential way to get around it, would be to pull it out. But I think Councilmember Briggs and I both, I think, have like an inclination on on how we feel about this, but are open to kind of the board's the commission's guidance as well. If you guys feel strongly that it is important that we have a vote, we're open to that as well. So we just wanted to bring that to you because I know that it's been a topic of discussion before.
I can share process-wise. My only concern is setting the quorum and just hearing maybe from folks who have been on the commission for longer how the quorum is set. And would that influence it at all, given we have certain, fewer voting members? So I don't know if anyone wants to share on that.
Yeah, for quorum itself, it's 6 voting members. So
regardless of the number of
that is how it is in
members.
Currently the way it is, at least in this, it just says the presence of 6 voting members shall constitute a quorum.
Right.
It is not anything respective of how many there are overall, although that could be altered, I suppose, technically.
Yeah, Councilmember Medina, did you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it. I'm trying to pull up the bylaws again in front of me right now. I think that's set based on a majority of the voting members, right, Joe? And so I would advise also changing that number to reduce it to reflect that.
Commissioner Murski.
A few comments. I believe we have 15 voting members. I'm not positive on that. If the commission was completely filled, so dropping that number by 2, I don't think in principle makes a big difference. The one thing that I value in having commissioners vote is that council members vote is that they really do have to take a position, and we get to hear it, and they generally have to justify why, or they don't have to, but they generally do justify their thinking, and I think that's helpful. On the other hand, I agree that it really doesn't sort of make sense, or there is incongruity between us being a policy advisory group and advising a group of people that are voting in our deliberations. So I think from a principle perspective, it doesn't make sense that the council members vote. On the other hand, I've always found it useful. And I would point out that the Environmental Commission, which I think has been around longer than the Energy Commission, also has voting council members. So there are 2 council members on the Environmental Commission, and they vote. And there's been discussion of the bylaws, and I missed the last meeting, and there was a discussion of the bylaws. I was out of the country, and I don't know if this came up and what was finally resolved. But in my view, it makes sense that council maybe consider this, in the sense that there should be consistency between the various boards and commissions in terms of whether or not council members vote. I don't know that it makes sense that they vote for some and don't vote for others. And lastly, I would say on planning commission, there's 1 council member, as best I know. That's always, I think, been the case. That council member votes, but in many cases, they're actually essentially defining policy, but I don't think that's true in all cases in terms of what planning commission does. In some cases, they're also advisory to council. So I think someone needs to look at this holistically, and they need to think, and that, you know, that includes us, that we need to think about what those pros and cons are. I'm just going to throw out one thing since I have the floor right now. We can come back to it, and that is, I think we should also have a discussion on youth membership. So I'll just put that out there, and we can put that in the parking lot. Thanks.
Or yeah, we can circle back to that. Councilmember Udina.
Thanks. I think all of the points that John raised are fair. I will add, I don't believe there's anything compelling the council members to vote. I don't think there's actually anything compelling any of the members to vote at our bylaws, because that is something we have had abstentions before. I have abstained before. But then I will also say, I do think so. Council could hypothetically exert its authority and say we're rejecting bylaws that have one or the other. We have generally deferred to the commissions in kind of making their own recommendations to us. And I have not checked, and this is something maybe I should have been a little bit more prepared for this. But we have model bylaws that we share with commissions that I know we have looked on before, and I can check into that to see. I'm trying to pull up if I have them in my inbox, if they recommend one version versus the other. But I would say the Renters Commission is the newest commission, and we are not voting members there. So I don't know if that adds any context.
Yes, Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, and I agree with Commissioner Murphy raised a number of good points. Just on the point of planning commission is a different type of commission than all of our other ones, in the sense that it is, we're required to have it. It's land use is different. So I think it's maybe best not to compare our other commissions so much to that planning commission because of its unique nature. But certainly just something we wanted to raise with all of you, and we're happy to take the guidance on it.
I'm curious what other commissioners think.
Go ahead.
I'll just add my 2 cents. I think on the face of it, I think given our role in this sort of scope of discussion and how in general conversations have progressed over the last year, I'd very much be in support of, I think, whatever sort of frees up our council members to sort of weigh in and have those discussions and get guidance, perhaps without having to express a position or a point of view on that as of yet, but in part to sort of weigh information and weigh the presentations and the feedback from the commission as well. So I'd be in favor of that.
Ditto.
Great. Okay, unless anyone has more comments on this, I want to circle back to the question of youth members. All right, go ahead, take the floor.
Comment on that briefly?
Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I just think that we should think about how well that's worked. Actually, I don't know right now how many youth commissioners' positions are filled right now on the commission. I don't know if both are filled or if one or they're both filled right now.
It's both, yeah.
Okay. The only thing that I would have us think about is the term of 1 year and whether the 1 year term is serving both the needs of the commissioners and potential commissioners that might be considering it, and also the needs of the commission. There's nothing that prevents someone from re-upping So from that perspective, they can serve 2, 3, or whatever more years, depending on their age and the age limit. On the other hand, there have been youth commissioners that I've observed in both the Energy and Environmental Commission that have come on and basically not, be frank, not participated much at all, and then just gone off commission. And I know that that's still an educational benefit for those youth commissioners and you know how they get an understanding of how government works and things like that. But I think maybe that's one thing that this group should think about is a 1-year term appropriate, or should we signal a greater level of commitment, for example, by raising it to 2 years? And I don't know if that's mandated by council or not, but I'll just throw that out there for discussion.
Okay, I'd very much like to hear from our youth commissioner, so hopefully you folks can provide some feedback. But Councilmember Regina, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I was actually going to out the youth commissioners Alex and Jacob are both serving in that role right now, and I think both could add some context to this. I think Alex is serving his second term, and so he has re-upped, and then Jacob is relatively new, so I don't know if you have as much context as you want to provide, or that you want to provide. I will say I think some of the thought around the 1-year term is also not to discourage particularly students who might be serving in their senior year and don't know where they're going next from saying, oh, I can't fulfill this commitment, so I won't even apply. And so I think that is some of the context around the shorter term. And then also because it is age limited, if it requires us to revisit more frequently, so that if, you know, if youth commissioners are consistently being appointed to 2-year terms and they're 25, it's potentially, you know, creating a situation where we have folks who are serving, you know, 2 years, more than a year and a half or something like that, where they are no longer in the age limit. And so it requires us to check it more frequently and make sure that those folks are actually fitting the criteria.
Thanks. I'd also like to hear what can we do as a commission to improve the experience of the youth commissioners and you know, invite more engagement. So we'll ask that you give some feedback. Yeah, thanks, Commissioner Zitelman. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think 1-year term seems fine to me personally, because like I got personally reached out to from Joe to ask if I wanted to reapply and stay on the commission, and that seemed to work pretty well, I think. I do hear what Councilmember Regina is saying about if people see a 3-year commitment and they're a senior in college and about to leave like Ann Arbor after that, then maybe they don't sign up at all. I would say I think having the youth spot is pretty important. It's really enabled me to connect more with the city and feel engaged, and like people like me, our opinions are being valued. I would say for engagement with youth commissioners, though, something to improve, I think, is just that a lot of these discussions can come off pretty intimidating if you're not very familiar with a lot of the technical aspects of the discussions, with how, you know, different RFPs work and like how money flows through the city, and you know, all the technical aspects of energy and such. So I think maybe just making sure that we're providing space for people to share opinions, to ask questions that maybe you already know the answer to, like make us feel more valid, to just say some silly little things that maybe it's not the most necessary, but it helps us engage. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you so much for that comment. I just want to share that nothing you say in this context is silly, and you know, it's super valuable. I'm slightly embarrassed that we don't already make room for that, and I think vocabulary and questions about process. I mean, let it be known that sometimes it's intimidating to me as well. So for sure, you guys are not the only ones. So yeah, Commissioner Sendra.
Yeah, I would really just echo that and say that there's been a bit of a learning curve just figuring out how the commission operates. And I think I still do support just the 1 year, but really putting that emphasis on the idea of being able to come back and do more, because I've been here, I think 4 months. And it's taken a bit to understand where exactly my place is, but I think that overall it's been good. And I think speaking with that understanding that not everybody fully understands all the technical aspects of it would be very beneficial.
Joe, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to throw in just a couple perspective, I don't know if helpful or whatnot. But yeah, there's a couple of things that I want to note. One, like especially as related to like the term and with age and stuff like that, technically the way it is set up is that like as long as they are, you know, of said age by the appointment of it, they're able to serve throughout. So just noting that, like, you know, if it was extended to 3 years, and again, kind of as Councilmember Dina said, like, you know, you are technically 24 and 364 days, and then your birthday is the next day, serving for 3 years. You know, someone's a 28-year-old youth commissioner, which, I mean, I'm that age and I feel like a youth. Who knows? So there's that. Just noting for context on that end. Additionally, I wanted to note that you know, we've had a couple of conversations with like other cities who have commissions as well, and are constantly trying to find ways to get youth more engaged in, you know, city processes in ways that, you know, both help, you know, members of the, you know, youth members as well as members of the government itself. And this has been a way that a lot of you know, people we've spoke to have found kind of to meet that line of, again, both providing benefit for youth who have a, you know, interest, capacity, things like that to get more involved, while also you know, providing benefits as well to, you know, both the commission, council, staff, all that kind of stuff. So I think it, you know, from that perspective, it's meeting a lot of goals. And the other thing I want to probably was, you know, mention both for youth, but I also want to put it into the broader perspective of, you know, feeling comfortable asking questions as well, things like that. You know, we clearly have a lot of experts on this board. All of you do a lot of incredible things and are very smart people. But I do want to note that, like, you know, as a not governing, but like an advisory body towards city council, we want to be respectful of all opinions, all lines of thoughts, all things like that. You know, just because we're the ones in the room who have thoughts, there's plenty of people who are not in the room and have plenty of other, you know, thoughts, things like that. And, you know, barely, you know, again, not anyone here in this commission, but, you know, everywhere, but people don't even, you know what energy is, what a light bulb turning on. And that's the extent of what people know about energy, but we want to make sure we're including those thoughts in there. So like, again, going for every single person, both here and for callers, things like that. There's no dumb question. If you have the question, I guarantee you so many more people have that question. So never, you know, never feel afraid of that. So that was a tangent. Just wanted to bring that up though. But yeah, wanted to provide perspective on some of those things there.
Thanks, Joe. Valuable input as always. Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to follow up on that latter point as well. And you know, I'm never quite sure how many folks are watching this in the moment, but I would like to share that I will often take, when we're discussing something that seems like it would be of interest to the broader community, which is fairly often these days, because this is work that OSI is doing is very important to folks. And I'll provide a link in my newsletter to these discussions. And so one of the things that I think is really helpful for folks here, and youth members may be most attuned to this. I think, you know, there's varying degrees for all of us, but when you hear jargon come up, please flag it, because the reality is, you know, most folks are not attuned, are not working in this space. I certainly don't. I'm beginning to get more familiar with the lingo that comes up as well, but you know, things like RFPs and all of that comes up, that's not everyday language for folks. And so when you hear it come up and it's, you know, either a question for yourself or you've come along, but you're still attuned enough to go, oh, we're getting a little too technical here. You know, I think it's a good time to for somebody to raise their hand and just say, can we put this more into plain speech so that, we can bring others along into the discussion as well. So thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments on the bylaws or this topic? Okay, thank you so much, Commissioner Murski, for providing that amazing food for thought. That was a really valuable conversation that I think makes our body stronger. Okay, so we're gonna move along.
Can I ask a quick question? Sorry,
oh,
just to butt in.
yes.
What are we going to do about voting,
yes.
non-voting members?
Yeah, I was just gonna flag, so for proposed amendments, they should be submitted in writing. And then that will be distributed, to the city attorney. And then would be voted on at the next one. I'm gonna rely a little on the council members here to make sure I'm interpreting this right. If I'm doing anything, do we need to have that written here and then voted on to submit, or is that just a get me the written thing and then I send it to them and then we vote on it? I'm process questioning.
Yes, go ahead.
Unless there is something in our bylaws requiring 2 meetings for an amendment, which I don't think there are. I think we could have an amendment at the next meeting when we vote to approve these. And that would also give us time to connect with Attorney Frost also, because perhaps he would advise that best practice is to have voting members if that was a question that was raised. And so I can get with him on kind of what the model bylaws state as well. So we could have that full context when we have the conversation. But I'm happy to reach out to him. I've worked with him on bylaws before.
Yeah, thanks for doing that. The attorney approval is required for the commission vote. So we need that. Thanks. Commissioner Zillman.
Yeah, the bylaws do say that amendments need to be submitted in writing at the previous regular meeting to be considered.
Okay.
Yeah, of course it didn't share where I was, but yeah. Yeah, here's the section for those who don't have it up immediately. It says just amendments may be approved at any regular meeting. Proposed amendments must have been submitted in writing at a previous regular meeting to be considered. Amendments must be submitted to the Office of City Attorney for review prior to adoption by the commission. After adoption, bylaws are not effective until approved by City Council. So
I am happy to. I will take the advice of the body here. I am happy to quickly type something up based on the Renters Commission and send it to Joe to pass around. Or the other thing that we could do, there is nothing precluding us from amending the bylaws and council then approving an amendment to the bylaws, depending on the process you wanted to follow. So we could also move forward with an amendment the month after. So whatever folks are comfortable with. I don't want you guys to feel like you have to vote on something if you want to better understand what the position of the city attorney is first. So I can type something up quickly, or we can wait and maybe just do this as a follow-up to the bylaws being approved. Does anyone have a preference?
Yeah.
I'm fine with the second part, so we don't have to put you on the spot and have to write
Yeah.
something up right now.
Yeah, and I'd like to hear from the attorney as well. So I'm fine following up in a future meeting. Cool.
All right, I will have on my to-do list to bring a recommendation to the next meeting. So it's part of the discussion, but then we could approve it for a potential amendment at the following meeting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, any other process related items before we move along on the agenda? Great. Joe, would you like to give us an update on the working group situation?
Yeah, so as you all remember, we established a working group, and the plan there was to have interest submitted on people who would be serving on it. I currently have one person who has submitted interest for serving on a work group. And that's not quite a group if we have one person. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having one person who's going out and doing things, but at the end of the day, that's just kind of one person. It's not a group. So just wanted to bring that up, say that that's kind of where we are in the process. If that's a thing we want to move forward on and we have one person on a group, that is certainly an option. But just wanted to bring that up for discussion, noting that, we kind of had talked about, well, if we have a group and, we don't really have interest, maybe we do not move forward necessarily with that. So I just wanted to bring that up as a point of discussion, open that back up to everyone to say, is this still the route we're interested in going down? Does this feel like a useful use of time? And just kind of reopen that up, noting that, in the month or so since we discussed, we did not have, we had one person who was interested in serving on the group. I'm not necessarily saying we need to make a decision here and there, but just noting that and seeing if people have thoughts on, like, if that changes how we are thinking about it.
Commissioner Murski?
Just a brief comment. That one person can recruit non-commissioners to, fill out the working group. So people should keep that in mind, depending on how motivated that individual might be.
That's a nice idea. Vice Chair Hart?
Just a clarification with respect to working groups and the commission voting on the working groups. As I'm reading it, it sounds like the bylaws, it sounds like creating work groups or designating members to perform the research. Is that something that's different? It sounds like I'm reading that different than a committee, and that it would need to be staffed and potentially voted on, but I'm not sure if I'm reading that right, I guess.
I think you are, based on what I'm understanding you're saying. Yeah, there for this particular topic, there would just be at least like consultation with staff, just to, again, one, make sure people that are, going down the right pipeline and are cognizant of, what has and has not been done, legality, all that kind of stuff. But yes, I don't think I'm addressing your question, but just want to make sure.
I guess what I'm wondering is am I reading in the bylaws that the work groups are much more informal, in the sense that the commission can identify a working group, and that working group can more or less go and do some work to develop recommendations or work on specific topics, and then it may not need to be any more formal than that?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Yep. And which again brings back to the point, one person is fine if, again, said person is interested in being a group of one. And as Commissioner Murski pointed out, can also bring in more people. I'm obviously not going to name the person. They can identify themselves if they would so choose. But just wanted to put that out there. And like I said, if they've got the time and availability to bring in more people, cool. If not, also cool. And, we can pivot and think of alternative ways to achieve the goals if ultimately the work group isn't what is the most effective use of time.
In terms of formality, I'm also seeing that the committee or work group should have a clearly defined task, preferably in writing with a timeline for performing the task. And I don't believe that we have that. I think there were some suggestions, but nothing, approved by the body. And so my understanding is that we currently don't have a working group. We have sort of interest in that direction. Does that sound right? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So that being said, that's, a bit of a statement of where we are. I don't know how much more we need to discuss this. Does anyone have anything else to share on this?
I'll just flag, I was the person who said I'm interested, but I don't have capacity or time to go out and recruit and be proactive. And I'm kind of more interested in being one researcher amongst many if there are other interested folks, and not kind of leading the effort. But, I think caveated it with I'm interested, but I don't need to join a work group just to join a work group. So if there's not going to be work done or not, true interest in pursuing this, then I am not, married to moving this forward.
Okay. All right. Well, then in that case, I think we'll hold on for now and wait to see if any more interest comes forward, and then we can gather momentum if it's going to happen, and if it's not going to happen, then I think that will become clear. All right, so let's move forward. So now we're going to move to a discussion about potentially an approval of the 2024 meeting calendar. This is just a list of dates for next year. So should be pretty straightforward. But I would like to ask if there's a motion to approve the calendar as posted, and a second.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Mirsky, in a second. Thank you, Commissioner Berkowitz. Okay, commissioners, any please raise your hand if you have any proposed changes or issues with the calendar. All right, seeing none. All those in favor of approving the calendar as posted, please raise your hand and say aye. Okay, all right. Unanimous approval of the calendar, so that the calendar is approved for next year. Thank you very much. And before we move forward, I just want to share that this question about voting membership for the council members and the question of the quorum. I just want to note, if you are planning to be absent at a meeting, please inform us as soon as you can, and especially over the summer, and around the holidays. I don't have, I'm not looking at specific dates, but every month there's kind of something that happens locally and in our lives. So again, just be aware that it's important to let us know, and we thank you for doing that. All right, let's see, where are we now? Okay, so we'll take a report from OSI. Joe, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just gonna say the only thing that was mostly a formality. Those dates are all the same as what's already in your calendar. It's just the second Tuesday of each month. So you have the Zoom link or all that stuff in your calendar already. Nothing has changed from that. So just wanted to make that clear if that wasn't clear.
Thanks.
We just have to technically approve that every year and send it to the clerk. So
Commissioner Levin.
Sorry, I was just wondering, are these still going to be virtual? Is there any move to go in person next year?
we're still virtual. There's the possibility of doing things in person. We have to vote on it as a commission to do so up to 4 times per year. The thing to note, though, with that is because of with ours being at the same time as Planning Commission, we would have to change around when our date and time are to have available facilities.
Does that lock us into never going back in person? I mean,
no, like I said, we can move it around as needed. I think Councilmember Medina has more on this, so feel free.
Yeah, go ahead.
I can answer because this is a decision from council. I don't see a likely shift in the near term. I think we have our kind of compromise was to allow the body to choose to meet in person quarterly or up to 4 times a year. It doesn't have to be quarterly, up to 4 times a year. I think there are a number of thoughts behind that. One, I think obviously it's not necessarily pandemic related at this point, but I think there are some accessibility benefits to continuing to meet virtually. We definitely have had commissioners who have expressed that they're able to serve because we remain in this format. But also I think for me, one of the factors is simply the acknowledgement of the staff who are working these commissions for us, who would then need to be in City Hall. And we also mentioned kind of the scheduling of kind of finding the rooms for these, that as they have to meet over one another and things like that. And so there are some kind of administrative functions as well, but just the fact that our staff members can often staff these from home now is another big benefit for me.
Councilmember Briggs.
Thanks. Yeah, Councilmember Medina spoke well to those issues. I will say that I think one of the challenges, of course, of meeting remotely is that we never ever connect in person, and there is some real merit in doing that. And so I would hope that we discussed this a little bit last year. I would hope in this coming year that we can figure out a way at least to have some sort of social gathering. Obviously, if we get together and it's a quorum, that means we can't talk policy council or commission related business. So that's challenging for a bunch of energy folks that are built around that. But I do think that's something that I would like to try to get on our calendars in some capacity, an ability to connect and build those relationships, because I think that's important. So we'll figure out one way or the other.
Yeah, I love that idea. Do we think it would be official business to choose that time, or is that something we can do offline? I'm just curious. The process experts.
Yeah, we could figure out a time separately to figure that out.
Okay.
Again, assuming everything is, not energy commission related, just purely,
Okay.
oh, hey, we like each other. Let's hang out or something like that. So, or just get to know each other better.
Great. That gives me a little, yeah, I'm happy to help organize it. I just wanted to make sure I'd be following process. Councilmember Radina.
Yeah, just adding on to that, I would say, so we've had, I've had at least one of my commissions has met to kind of celebrate an outgoing long-term commissioner as kind of the excuse to be able to do that, something like that. But there's also the possibility that you could choose to try to find one of those, times where you want to just have a meeting in person, if that is something you wanted to do, and folks could gather afterwards or something like that socially. So I think there are a number of options to do that and ways you could go about that, but there are certainly opportunities for us to get together in person, because I do think that is valuable as well.
Yeah, and just to note, in case I wasn't clear about this, we absolutely still can do this. Like they said, there's up to 4 times per year. We just have to vote on it ahead of time that it will be an in-person meeting, and then we will have to just do some logistics and all of that. So again, it might mean changing the meeting date and time for that specific week, or for that specific month, which could create difficulties for some folks and stuff like that. But it's absolutely something that we can do. So I don't want anyone to be sitting there and we just told you no, don't do that. It is possible. There's just things we have to work around, which is fine if that is something that we is of interest.
Okay, Commissioner Murphy.
Very briefly, I think there is something in writing somewhere, this for our council members, that board and commission members were to be recognized by city at some type of event. I know during Howard Lazarus's term, there was an event for all boards and commission members meeting at the Michigan Theater. The budget wasn't very big, the turnout wasn't very good, but that might be something else that might be considered. Which is not necessarily a bad thing, because lots of boards and commissioners are obviously very civically active, and it's good for them to know other boards and commissioners personally, other than just through what they read in MLive or see on a screen. So that might be something that you look into again, and maybe some consideration might have to be given as to how you attract people, because like I said, it wasn't that well attended. Part of it was weather related, but Councilmember Briggs may remember that. I don't remember if she attended or not, but whatever, just to throw that out there for one other thing to think about. Thanks.
Great, fantastic. Are we ready to move to the energy report?
Sounds good. Yeah, some stuff in the newsletter, some stuff I don't know if this hasn't all been in there, but just want to note a couple things in addition. But one, we've received, along with some collaborators, a grant from the EPA that'll be working on advancing local and regional resilience initiatives. It's both a combination of creating brick and mortar resilience hubs. There'll be multiple of them, both in the city and in the county, with the goal of it being kind of a broader initiative. In addition to that, also working on the network itself. So again, it's not purely just making resilience hubs, but also helping how they interact with each other to enhance what folks need every day, not just in the time of disaster. So more of that to come, but just noting that for it is both resilience hubs that have energy stuff, as well as how everything works together. I've also mentioned this at different meetings, but we have a new round of OSI A20 ambassador applications have opened up. Applications are open until February 14th. No prior education or experience is necessary. All of it is just people who are interested in A20 sustainability broadly. So if you know anyone like that, and again, similarly, where it's like, oh, a commission that's too much responsibility or too much, to do all at once. This is a great opportunity to be anyone from any age. Great opportunity to get started in learning about sustainability, things like that. I also just wanted to note that at the end of last week, we just put out a request for proposals for geothermal advisory services. So if you know anyone in your network who's interested in learning more or bidding on that proposal, you can see RFP 2365 on the city's procurement website. Want to note, because I know we've talked about sometimes this is in a different lane than the existing grant we have for studying or designing a geothermal system in and around the Bryant neighborhood. This is a slightly separate stream of work. It all fits together, but noting that RFP is out there, and if you know anyone who's interested, please refer them our way. That's all I got. Now you're still on mute there.
Thank you so much, Joe. Commissioner Murski, would you like to share from the Environmental Commission?
Yes, as I mentioned, unfortunately, I missed the last meeting. I was out of the country, and 6-hour time difference didn't really make it possible. But there were 3 topics. One is on urban bird safety, which is basically bird strikes. I've reviewed the presentation. It's really interesting. One thing I plan on doing is making sure that the lessons learned from it are shared with the university, so that also it's considered for University of Michigan building standards. But I encourage you, if you're interested in the topic, to take a look at that. And then the bylaws were considered, just like we did today. I mentioned I don't know exactly the outcome of that, but I don't recall that council member voting issues came up. But maybe that's something that our 2 council members can talk with the 2 council reps on the Environmental Commission. And then the last topic was on policy recommendations. Council sets policy recommendations and priorities for our lobbying group. And I think those are done annually at around the end of the year. I'm not positive about that, but I know that the Environmental Commission looked at that and made recommendations. I don't recall that we've done this for a while, and I don't know how that overlaps with the timing that council has in finalizing that list, but that's might be something that we consider for a future meeting, or put it on the agenda at the right time. I'm just going to make up something. If council does this in September next year, then we might put it on our agenda for July or something like that. So we have 2 meetings to consider that. That's it. And I see Council Member Radina might want to comment on it. Go ahead.
I am on policy committee, and so I can add some or something around that too. We will also, I believe, during this process, our committee staff person for policy has all of the committee. It reaches out to all of the committees and asks, or all of the commissions. So there will be an invitation for you to participate in that process when it's getting updated. I think we are likely, unless we are wildly successful and everything in our policy agenda gets adopted, I think we're likely looking at having it adopted for the legislative term. And so it likely would get updated once every 2 years. And then kind of as the next legislative session or the next legislative term takes place. But if there are ever things that this body feels we need to take a position on or something like that, feel free to reach out to me. Like I said, I serve on both bodies. That also does not preclude us, just because it is not included in our policy agenda document, which was focused on some kind of pretty high level focus areas. We used to submit a list to our lobbyists that was like 200, 300 items long. That checklist still exists, but it is not our actual policy agenda document. Those are things where we're trying to move key priorities up in Lansing. And then if there are opportunities on that huge checklist of things, if we suddenly see legislation moving, things like that, there are still areas where we'll obviously take action or voice support. But if we're using kind of the power of the city, we're really focused in on kind of those key areas in our policy agenda document. And finally, I'll just say that we can always pass a resolution in support of something if something's coming up and it's not on either of those documents. And so there are opportunities for us to do that as well. And we have done that previously, where we've reiterated support for legislation. I believe after the shooting at MSU, we called for additional support in the legislature, and called out specific legislation, and then dispersed that resolution to our delegation, but then also the Speaker of the House, the governor, the Senate Majority Leader, etc. So those are the things that we'll do.
Okay, any additional comments on that? Otherwise, we'll move to public input. Right. Seeing no additional comments. Yes, Councilmember Briggs.
Sorry, I don't have the agenda in front of me. I just wanted to make sure I provided an update from council as well. The item that I thought that folks might be interested in is planning related. You'll recall some time ago that the discussion of premiums was brought to the Energy Commission, and feedback was provided. We've gone through essentially the recommendation from planning consultants and planning commission and planning staff is that we remove our premiums, which is, I want to go fully into this discussion here, but please know you can reach out to me and I can send you a report on this. Essentially how we remove sort of floor area ratio for our calculations. And so that is relevant to here because we had sustainability ones. So essentially allowing for greater density through the sustainability elements. That is something that City Council will be considering. We also have another incentive that's in place, which is height bonuses for sustainability. I think there's probably some interest here in what is considered sustainability as part of those height. But I just wanted to let you know we've gone through first reading. There's going to be a public hearing. I think it's probably the first meeting in December in terms of the timing. There's a lot of information on the city's website under this, lots of different consultant meetings and subcommittee meetings and reports. So the planning staff report on this is actually fairly light because it links to that entire process. So that might be something I can send over to Joe and Joe can share out potentially. But I do think I suspect it's something that folks around this table have some interest in and also might be getting some questions about.
Great, thanks for that update. Okay, we're gonna move to public input. So this is an opportunity for people to speak for up to 3 minutes. If you're watching on CTN, please call 888-788-0099 or 877-853-5247 and enter the meeting ID 956-8718-7876. This information is also displayed on the meeting agenda and video feed. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand one by one using the last 3 digits of your phone number. To electronically raise your hand to indicate your desire to speak, please press *9 on your phone. You will hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any background sounds so that we may hear you clearly. Please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments. Thank you.
I do not currently have anyone. Just gonna give about 15 seconds or so here. All right, not seeing anyone.
Okay, so we're gonna move into a discussion about items for the next agenda, and I wanted to propose a brief discussion about potentially having a very short break in this meeting, and maybe folks can speak about protocol for other commission and council meetings, but in my experience in, very long board meetings, and especially those on Zoom, a break can be really healthy for all of us. Just a little personal moment, could be 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. I don't think it would really extend our meeting much longer than it needs to be. So just going to throw that out there as a kind of point of improvement for the meeting. Okay. Yeah. Great. If anybody is severely opposed to a short break, please let us know, either here or in email. But I'll think about incorporating a break, maybe an hour and a half or so, depending on if we have a presentation. I think it's just fair. It's a long time to sit, and so that makes a lot of sense. Okay, thanks for your support. Any other ideas for agenda items for our next meeting? Okay, I'm not seeing any ideas. People always like to raise their hand after I've decided that there are no ideas. Okay, Commissioner Morski?
Just repeat what I said before. Deploying the Bryant neighborhood model across the rest of the city.
Do you have another comment?
Yeah, I just want to remind you and Joe that we have an offer from Peck to make about a 10-minute presentation on the latest in climate science and what the Earth is telling us.
Sounds amazing. Okay, yeah, we definitely have that on the docket. What else? Oh yes, I would like to share that we had discussed, our body had discussed a couple of months back, talking about bringing in some experts from other cities and other perspectives on natural gas ban type policies, sticks and carrots and the like. So I'm working with a former city council member at City of Cambridge, Massachusetts, to come on. This person is an absolute pioneer in this work, and I worked with him during my time in Massachusetts. So he's agreed to come on for January, so not next month, but the following. And so if anybody has other folks with different perspectives, please share, and we can, you can reach out to them and we can get them on the agenda. But I'm hoping that January will be a meeting kind of focused on some more sticks and carrots, and I love differing perspectives. So anyone with a kind of a different angle on this, I'd love to see them present. Cool. Yes.
Isn't and I don't want to pour water on it, because I want to hear anything related to mitigation and getting rid of natural gas. But my understanding that the key in Massachusetts is that they have a state law. No, okay, then forget about it. I can't wait from your friend.
No, yeah. So they were they have a state law now, but that's because they had a grassroots movement to reverse state building code preemption. So the work that this person did over the last 5 years or so actually created the political will to create that state law. So it's a really cool story that I think is a great parallel for Michigan.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Thank you.
Hey. Any other thoughts before we adjourn tonight? Okay, well, I'll just say thanks everyone for a really amazing meeting, super engaging, and I'm happy that we got to highlight some of our youth commissioners and also hear the great work from OSI. So it's really good things happening. It's currently 8:15 p.m. on the East Coast, and as chair, I declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you everyone again for joining, and we'll see you in December.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks all.